Imagine finding out that something you do every single week in your own kitchen, something you do specifically because you are trying to be practical, trying to save money, and trying not to waste food, is quietly and systematically creating the conditions for one of the deadliest cancers in the human body without you knowing. Does that sound extreme? Unfortunately, it is not. There is a habit that hundreds of millions of Americans repeat every week without a second thought: reheating leftovers. But the truth about what happens inside four very specific foods the second time heat touches them is something that most people will go their entire lives without ever being told. In the next few minutes, I am going to show you exactly which four foods are the most dangerous to reheat, what they are chemically turning into inside your body when you press that microwave button, and why that transformation connects directly to one of the cancers with the lowest survival rates in all of modern medicine, pancreatic cancer. My name is Dr. Kendra Harris. I have spent my career working with patients navigating devastating diagnoses, and I am going to tell you something today that I believe every single person who cooks at home deserves to know. Because I have sat across from too many patients who received a terminal diagnosis, looked at me with tears in their eyes, and asked, "Why did nobody warn me about this sooner?" I am done staying quiet. Here is what you need to understand before we begin. Your pancreas never warns you. It does not hurt when it is being damaged. It does not swell. It does not send you an early warning signal while the damage is quietly accumulating over years and decades of repeated chemical insults. By the time you notice the first symptom, the back pain, the jaundice, the unexplained weight loss, it is almost always too late. The disease has typically been developing for years, and the 5-year survival rate for pancreatic cancer sits at around 12%. Let me repeat that: 12%. That is not a disease that gives you a second chance once it announces itself. It is a disease where prevention is not just the best strategy, it is the only strategy that consistently works. And some of what feeds that prevention is sitting in your refrigerator right now, waiting to be reheated for tomorrow's lunch. Before I walk you through the four specific foods, I need to explain what is actually happening at the chemical level when food is reheated. Because without that biological foundation, this will sound like fear-mongering rather than the hard biochemistry it actually is. When certain foods are cooked for the first time, natural chemical reactions occur. Proteins interact with sugars and heat. Nitrogen-containing compounds interact with available amino acids. Fats begin to oxidize. In most cases, the compounds produced by this first-time cooking are present in small, manageable amounts that your liver and kidneys can process and eliminate. But reheating changes the equation fundamentally. The second time heat is applied, a deadly sequence happens simultaneously. First, whatever protective antioxidant compounds were present in the original food are completely degraded or destroyed. The biological buffers that would have partially neutralized harmful compounds are gone. Second, the chemical reactions that produced small amounts of carcinogenic compounds during the first cooking are accelerated again, but this time without any of those protective buffers. Third, bacterial activity that occurred while the food was cooling in your fridge has already begun converting certain benign compounds into highly reactive intermediate forms. The second wave of heat then drives those intermediate forms forward into full-blown carcinogens. The specific class of compounds we are most concerned about from an oncology research standpoint are nitroso compounds, also called nitrosamines, and heterocyclic amines. Both have been classified by the International Agency for Research on Cancer as probable human carcinogens. Dietary exposure to these exact compounds is a documented pathway that contributes to pancreatic cancer risk. This is not speculative. This is documented in the peer-reviewed scientific literature. I want to tell you about a patient of mine. I will call her Eleanor. Eleanor was 68 years old, a retired accountant, and an incredibly practical woman. She lived on a fixed income and hated wasting money, so every Sunday she would meal prep. She cooked large batches of food, rice, chicken sausages, and spinach, and packed them into plastic containers to eat throughout the week. Every single day at 12:30 p.m., she took a container out of the fridge and put it in the microwave for 2 minutes. Eleanor thought she was doing everything right. She was eating vegetables. She was controlling her portions. Her doctor praised her discipline. When Eleanor came to me, she had been experiencing a dull ache in her mid-back and a slight yellowing of her eyes. The scan confirmed what I dreaded: advanced pancreatic cancer. As we reviewed her lifestyle to understand how a woman with no family history and seemingly healthy habits had developed this, we began talking about her daily routines. We will come back to Eleanor because the exact contents of those Tupperware containers she reheated every day for 15 years are exactly what I am warning you against right now. Here is food number 1: processed meat. Specifically, reheated processed meat. This is the one that most people think they understand, but actually do not. I am talking about hot dogs, sausages, bacon, ham, deli cuts, and canned meat. Basically, any meat that has been cured, smoked, or preserved using nitrates and nitrites. These foods already contain a meaningful concentration of nitroso compounds simply from the way they are manufactured in the factory. The nitrites used as preservatives react with the amines naturally present in meat protein during processing, producing nitrosamines before the food ever reaches your kitchen. When you reheat these foods, you are not starting with a clean chemical slate. You are applying heat to a food that already contains documented carcinogens. And heat acts as an extreme accelerant for nitrosamine formation. The higher the temperature and the longer the exposure, the more the reaction compounds. Frying or microwaving processed meat at high heat produces a meaningfully higher concentration of nitrosamines than the original cold food contained. Studies examining red and processed meat consumption have proposed several mechanisms linking them to pancreatic cancer, specifically identifying heterocyclic amines, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and nitroso compounds produced by high temperatures as key mutagens. The practical truth is this: processed meats contain their own built-in carcinogenic precursors. Cooking them once is already a chemical event. Reheating them at high temperatures is adding accelerant to a biological fire that should never have been started. If you are going to eat them fresh once, and never microwave them again. Food number 2 is the one that surprises people the most: spinach and other nitrate-rich leafy greens. People reach for spinach precisely because it is healthy. They add it to everything because the nutrition advice they have received for decades is correct. Spinach is genuinely rich in iron, folate, and antioxidants. And then they reheat the leftover spinach from dinner the next day, completely undoing a meaningful portion of that nutritional benefit while simultaneously triggering the exact chemical pathway they were trying to avoid. Here is the simple, scary chemistry. Spinach contains naturally occurring nitrates. In fresh spinach, these are entirely benign and even beneficial for your blood pressure. But when spinach is cooked and then allowed to cool and sit in your refrigerator, bacterial activity and enzymatic reactions within the vegetable begin converting those harmless nitrates into nitrites. This conversion happens continuously as it sits. When you reheat it, 2 devastating things happen. First, the heat drives further nitrite formation. Second, the heat forces a reaction between those nitrites and the amino acids in the spinach, producing highly toxic nitrosamines. A study published in the journal Foods specifically warned against storing boiled spinach for more than 12 hours at room temperature because of this exact nitrate to nitrosamine conversion pathway. This also applies to celery, beetroot, kale, and carrots. The irony is heartbreaking. The vegetable you are reheating specifically because you think it will protect your health is chemically transforming into something that the World Health Organization has established as a carcinogen linked to gastrointestinal and pancreatic cancers. The fix? Eat leftover spinach cold in a salad? Cold does not drive the nitrosamine forming reaction. Heat does. If you have made it this far into the video, you are clearly invested in protecting your body and your future. You want to see what comes next, but most viewers enjoy this deep educational content and then scroll away without subscribing, and then they miss everything that follows. If this video means something to you, if knowing the chemistry of these foods changes how you cook this week, tap subscribe right now. It takes 1 second. If not, you will probably forget this channel exists, and you will miss a lot of important, life-saving conversations ahead. Let me ask you a quick question. Which of those first 2 foods do you currently reheat the most? Write meat or spinach in the comments right now. I read every single one, and seeing what you are doing in your kitchens helps me know exactly what medical blind spots we need to cover next. Let us continue, because food number 3 is one most people already suspect is dangerous, but for the entirely wrong reason. Cooking oils, specifically reheating fried foods. Most people understand vaguely that reusing oil is bad for you. What they do not understand is the specific chemistry of why and how it connects directly to cancer risk. When a polyunsaturated cooking oil like sunflower, corn, soybean, or canola oil is heated to a high temperature, a process called lipid peroxidation begins. The fatty acids react with oxygen and heat to produce a cascade of oxidized, highly toxic compounds, aldehydes, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and acrylamide. These compounds are genotoxic. That is a medical term meaning they cause direct physical damage to your DNA. When food fried in that oil is reheated in your microwave, the oxidation process continues exactly where it left off. Each additional exposure to heat compounds the damage. But here is the specific danger with microwaves. When fried food is reheated in a microwave, the surface temperature becomes uneven. Some areas of the food are scorched at microscopic ultra-high temperatures, producing massive concentrated spikes of those 3 classes of genotoxic compounds. You may not even see the scorching, but your cellular DNA will feel it. Every time you reheat French fries or fried chicken, you are applying additional heat to a food that was already saturated in oxidized oil. You are eating concentrated DNA damage. Never reheat fried foods. If you must, use an oven at a moderate, even temperature, but never the microwave. Food number 4 is different from the others in a critical way, but the end point is just as deadly. Rice. The risk from reheated rice is not primarily a direct chemical carcinogen. The risk is a heat-resistant bacterial toxin that has documented connections to severe intestinal inflammation, which is itself a major risk factor for gastrointestinal cancers. When cooked rice is left at room temperature, and research shows this happens routinely in households that cook large batches, a dormant bacterium called Bacillus cereus begins to multiply. The spores of this bacteria actually survive the original boiling process of the rice. As the rice cools on your counter, the bacteria wake up and produce toxins. Here is the critical, terrifying point that most people do not know. When you reheat the rice the next day, you kill the live bacteria, but the toxins they left behind are heat stable. They survive full microwave reheating. They survive stovetop reheating. The bacteria are gone, but the poison remains. In the short term, this causes food poisoning, cramping, and diarrhea. Unpleasant but survivable. But in the long term, repeated, weekly, low-level exposure to these bacterial toxins contributes to chronic intestinal inflammation. Every time your intestinal lining is irritated by these toxins, the inflammatory response leaves microscopic damage. Over years and decades of weekly exposure, that accumulated damage creates the exact cellular environment in which cancer can mutate and thrive. The connection between chronic intestinal inflammation and gastrointestinal cancers is one of the most replicated findings in cancer epidemiology. If you meal prep rice, you must cool it rapidly within 1 hour and refrigerate it immediately to stop the bacteria from growing. And never ever reheat it more than once. Let's go back to Eleanor. Remember those plastic containers? Every Sunday, she cooked a massive batch of rice and left it on the counter for hours to cool before packing it. She loaded it with spinach, thinking she was being healthy. She added sliced processed chicken sausage for protein. And every day at 12:30 p.m., she blasted it in the microwave. For 15 years, Eleanor was unknowingly eating a daily, concentrated dose of heat-stable bacterial toxins, nitrosamines, and mutated nitrites. Her body fought the inflammation and the DNA damage for as long as it could. But eventually, the cellular defense systems failed. Eleanor looked at me in my office and said, "I was just trying to do the right thing. None of this requires you to change your entire diet. None of this requires you to stop enjoying food, but it requires 4 specific, non-negotiable habit changes starting today. 1. Never reheat processed meats. Eat them fresh once. 2. Eat cooked spinach and leafy greens cold the following day. Do not let heat turn nitrates into nitrosamines. 3. Never reheat fried foods. You are compounding genotoxic DNA damage. 4. Cool rice within 1 hour and reheat it once only to steaming hot. Stop feeding your gut chronic inflammation. Those 4 changes, applied consistently to your weekly kitchen habits, meaningfully reduce your exposure to the specific class of compounds that oncologists connect to the cancers with the lowest survival rates. Today, the ignorance stops with you. If this video gave you something that will genuinely change how you cook this week, share it. Not for this channel. Share it for the person in your life who reheats their leftover sausage every morning, or the parent who meal preps rice for the whole week and has never once thought about the chemistry they are feeding their family. That share may be the single most useful thing you do for their health today. Subscribe for more honest conversations about what science actually says about the food choices that matter. Next time, we are going to cover the 5 breakfast foods that are routinely marketed to seniors as healthy, but that the research increasingly suggests are doing the exact opposite. You will not want to miss it. Protect your health with the information your kitchen never came with. Disclaimer: everything I have shared today is based on published biochemistry, food science research, and the documented work of international cancer research organizations. This is educational information, not personal medical advice for your situation. The connection between dietary carcinogens and cancer risk is well established, but cancer is complex and individual risk depends on many factors. If you have concerns about cancer risk or your diet, please have a thorough conversation with your own physician who knows your medical history.